So if you have an underground electric dog fence, then this is a sound that you don't want to hear. You have a power light, that power light's on, loop light's supposed to be on. If the loop light is off, then you could have either a transmitter or a loop problem in your wires. Then of course you get that beeping sound as well. So we'll go through and show you how to try to figure out what's going on, and the quickest, easiest way to figure this out as far as I have found. There's a few things that you need to do with your transmitter to just check and make sure that everything there is functioning correctly and it's not the problem. So the first thing to do is to come down and check these boundary wires. Just make sure that they're in there nice and secure, that they're stripped down to where you have about a 1/2 inch of copper wire that's going into those terminals. The next thing to do is to you have this same kind of model, 4 screws off, then this lid just kind of pops off the top. So once you get the screws off, then you can just kind of stick your screwdriver in here, kind of pop this plate out a little bit. Just gives you a place to kind of grab on, loosen this cover off, and it just slips straight off. And what we're looking for are these 2 fuses. If they are dark or the wire inside there is broken, then you'll have to replace those, just depending on what type you have. So I looked around trying to find some kind of a tool that I could buy to be able to find the break. Found this on Amazon, had a lot of good reviews. As far as setting it up, you have the transmitter here that has your cables with the alligator clips. They say to use a screwdriver. I'm just using a long nail here, which has worked just fine. Just something to get into the ground. It's wet out here. It does say it helps if your ground's wet. I'm doing this in the middle of winter. So the other key thing with this is you're either going to have to cut your line or find a splice you can undo. At least that's what I had to do to get a good signal. So that's what I've got here. This was a splice that I had where the double twist comes out from my shop. Undid that splice, connected the red alligator clip onto the line on part of the loop, and then got the black onto my nail for grounding. With this tool, you will just flick it to cable scan, and then this is your receiver. And so this is acting as, like I said, the transmitter, then you got receiver, and it just is going to make a loud beep or a tone, I guess, as you move around with this. So you wave it back and forth. I've got this line exposed. Hear the tone away from the line, and then when it kind of gets right over the line, it'll stop. And so you can kind of wave it back and forth, and you'll hear the tone cut out. So you do have volume controls on here and volume controls on the transmitter to adjust as needed. So to get started, you have 2 options. So you can either start on the line side and go that direction and just follow the line until the tone cuts out, or you can go like that was where my splice was, so I can go this way. I know I should have line running kind of along through here, and I don't have anything. If you know where your line is, then by all means you can follow until you pick up tone. If you don't know where the line is, then you're gonna have to go where you got your clip clipped onto the line, and that's going to allow you to do this method of just kind of going back and forth. Now for me, I had to end up walking, because I started this way and walked all the way around. It would have been a little bit quicker for me to have gone my other direction. So one thing I noticed as I walked around the yard with the receiver is the volume as you get closer to the break and further from where you have it connected, the sound gets lower and lower. It gets harder to pick up, so you're going to have to increase your volume. I actually did start with it down pretty low, because like I said, it was a little bit too high. It was kind of overriding the pauses as it went over the line. But with this, as you get further away, go on and turn it up, and you'll see the difference. So you heard how loud it was over by the transmitter where I had it hooked up. So this is several hundred feet from the transmitter. And you don't have to keep right on the line either. That's another thing. You know, you can just kind of walk along, you know, if you have some tough areas to get into, and see if you get tone. So I'm still getting tone here, but then this is kind of where the tone starts cutting out. So I haven't adjusted the volume, but the line's right in here, and it's getting a lot softer. As I got closer, you can just barely hear this. And I have not changed the volume setting. You can still kind of hear it where it's cutting in and out. So as I got close to the break, I actually had to hold it up. I could have used the earbuds, but I didn't have them with me. But the tone is so soft, you're just listening to the receiver as it is without the earbuds. You can still pick up where the tone kind of fades out over the wire. But at least for me, this showed me that I was getting very close to the break, you know, when the tone got very soft. And so as I kind of went, I was just kind of holding it at this point instead of swinging it and just moving it and listening. So I did that until I basically couldn't hear the tone very much anymore. Now, of course, I've got the wire exposed right here, so it's picking it up pretty nice. So that's something to watch for as you get close. If that tone fades out, just make sure your volume's up, and you are probably getting close to your break. So once I got to where I really couldn't hear anymore, I dug down, wire was right there, and pulled on it, and I had maybe about a foot, you know, of line until the break. And so then I just went, you know, whatever, 6 inches, 8 inches, you know, out, dug, and found the line on the other side of the break. So tool worked great. The biggest challenge was just figuring out really how to get everything connected. But once you do, it works good. And like I say, you know, if you go on the other side of the break with this, you aren't going to hear anything on the wire that you don't have your transmitter hooked to. It will be dead. So to repair this, I'm just going to take about a little bit over a foot, probably a foot and a half, close of the line, the wire, and strip off about a 1/2 inch on each end, and make sure that there's not any damaged wire around the brake. Make sure that that was the only part that was broken. So one thing that I saw that someone else had done, I thought was a good idea, is whenever you're doing your splice, is to actually take it and just make a knot. And the purpose of this is so whenever you make your splice, then it's going to pull on kind of the knot and where the knot is, instead of actually where your wires are connected. So you're not just pulling tension on one side and pull your splice out. And you know, it's probably easier to tie your knot before you strip your ends, so you can kind of cut your wires to be the same length. Then once you have your knot in and your wires, you just twist those together. Take your wire nut, just push on until that's good and tight on there. If you want to give it a tug to make sure it's on there good. And then if you have one of these, and it's got like a gel in there, and it's just to kind of help keep moisture out of your connection. So you can slide that in there, and so it just goes into the gel. Gonna putty back over that. And close it, and it just snaps shut. And that splice is done. Now, I have done some of these with just tape and just taping the splice, and I have done some without the knot. Hadn't thought about the knot. I think the knot's a good idea. But it's definitely going to help your splice stay together longer if you're doing some of these other extra measures. And if you don't have these fancy, I just had a couple of these from whenever I bought my system. Because honestly, this is like it's not the first splices I did, but I don't think I even used these whenever I put my fence in. So I'm just going to finish up doing these other splices and do the original splice, and then we'll turn it on and see if the system's working now. So I got the splice done, and so I'm right at the break, and if you remember, I was having to hold the receiver up to my ear just to barely hear it. And now, very strong signal, and so we're gonna go and see if there's any other breaks or if that was the only one. All right, so I'm back on the end that was dead, and it is having a signal now. So all I've got to do is put my original splice back together down here. Turn that off. Put my splice back together, and then we'll go turn the system on, and hopefully that loop light will be on. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. See if it's repaired. Boom. 2 lights, power, loop. So we've done a good job here today. Now, a couple of things that I would recommend is the length of the splice extra wire that I cut ended up being a little too short by the time I did the knots. So probably need to lean more towards about 2 feet in your extra wire that you're going to put in between the 2 broke ends. That would be probably the biggest thing that I would say to be aware of whenever you try to go do this. But now I'm just going to go take the collar off the dog, see if we're getting kind of the beeps as I go around the yard. And if we do, then we'll let her free. All right, we got the dog collar off. Go to the fence. Yep, here we go. She's working. And this is the poor critter who's been on a chain, except for when we are outside with her. And she will be more than happy to get out back in her yard. All right, and she's off. And she wants to play ball. Let's see what she does when she gets close to her line, because she's used to just running wherever she wants to go. There you go. She heard it. What do you think? Now you can stay out in the yard. I think she's happy about it. All right. One other thing I forgot to mention with this that my son actually figured out is, at least with mine, they did send the 9-volt batteries that you need to put into the units, the receiver and the transmitter. I'd already put in batteries, and then he dumped the case over, and it had 2 batteries in there for you. So they're down inside the case. So just be aware of that if you do decide to purchase this. So hopefully that helps if you have a break in your underground fence. Just a few pointers, and if you can, subscribe, I'll try to put some more videos out like this, things that I'm working on around our house, and things that may be helpful for people who run into the same problems that I do. Appreciate y'all watching. Have a good day.